Hi, from Gabby Orr, straight balls and strikes, political reporter at Politico.com, to a good friend of mine, John Locke, Crime Prevention Research Center president. Now, John is an expert on all things to do with the Second Amendment. We're going to get to some of that later. But, John, you have you wrote some things about the BuzzFeed story. Tell me what your experience with the BuzzFeed and BuzzFeed story is.
Well, my experience is with Jonah Peretti, who's the CEO and founder of BuzzFeed. I had interactions with him before he founded BuzzFeed. Back in 2003, he pretended to be me. He had set up a website, sent out hundreds of thousands of emails, supposedly from me. He also did this with somebody else. With the other person who he actually did it with first, he had a business conflict. The guy had a similar online business, rejectionline.com. And rather than just competing with the person, he thought it was somehow better to pretend to be that other person and to send out emails to the press saying that he had stolen Peretti's idea and things like that.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
And in my case, at the time, there was this debate about these abusive lawsuits against gun makers. And so he had an email that he sent out from me saying that I had rethought my position, that while there were some abuses, we didn't want to restrict lawsuits against gun makers. And so I was urging people, supposedly, to come out and contact their congressmen and senators to get them to vote against this legislation. And I first heard about it because a guy named Jim Glassman, who you may know, who used to write for the Washington Post.
So is this illegal, what he did?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Did you sue him?
I did sue him. I had to sue him to get him to take down the website and to stop sending out emails.
Let's move on to this story, though. I want to talk about what actually happened here. Give us a headline, the Trump-Cohen headline. It's President Trump directed, this is the biggest word right here in this whole story, directed his attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about the Moscow Tower project. That word directed right there is the kicker, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I mean, I've taught in law schools, but if you tell somebody to lie and you have some authority over them, then, you're
guilty.
Yeah.
It's like hiring someone to assassinate someone. You're just as guilty as the trigger puller. Mueller rebuttal. This is important. BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. Now, the interesting thing about that, and really the compelling thing about that, is that happened within 24 hours of BuzzFeed's blockbuster bombshell story
Right.
that everyone in the media ran with, and frankly, everyone in Hollywood ran with too, who hates Trump. They were looking for obstruction of justice. They were looking for impeachment. They were looking for more. And then within 24 hours, Robert Mueller's office, who's investigating the president to see if any of that's going on, put a stop to that immediately.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's the first time he's issued a statement like this. There's lots of other things that presumably false that have been in the media, but he hasn't felt it was necessary to go and slap those down. So it tells you, I guess, how far out of bounds even the Mueller people thought that this one was.
Very quickly, BuzzFeed stood by the story, not only tweeting that, scroll to the next one. I saw the CNN article where editor-in-chief Ben Smith stood by the article that they posted that Mueller's office refuted. So did the two reporters who wrote the article. We just really need BuzzFeed's credibility is on the line. BuzzFeed will be going back to cat videos and top 10 lists if we find out that this actually didn't happen, if these are bad sources.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know these reporters or anything. The reason why I wrote my piece was my interaction with Jonah Peretti. He's CEO, he's running it. And somebody who's willing to go and impersonate a person he's trying to destroy in business for financial reasons or send out hundreds of thousands of emails to go.
Buck stops here.
And he would argue with people. I had friends.
He could fire Ben. By the way, Ben Smith is like, he's become a god here in the media world in
Right.
DC because he ran up through the ranks and all of a sudden BuzzFeed went to like a very kind of a trusted news source, political news source. And this, the last two stories now on BuzzFeed have been just horrendous. They literally may take a torpedo to the side over this last one. President Trump tweeted this. Remember, it was BuzzFeed that released the totally discredited dossier,
Right.
paid for by crooked Hillary and the Democrats as opposition research on which the entire Russian probe is based. A very sad day for journalism, but a great day for the country. So again, between the dossier that they published they published. Remember, they actually decided to publish a dossier, and that was completely discredited. And now this one too.
Right. Well, I mean, with the dossier, they had literally lots of everybody in Washington and the press had copies of that for months, but they weren't going to publish it because they weren't able to verify any of it. You know, BuzzFeed put it out there just because they wanted people to be able to talk about it. But, you know, you just don't publish something, even if it could be completely false, just so people can talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Do we? Let's get this shot of SNL taking the shots. This is funny. BuzzFeed. Watch Michael Che, I believe. Go.
The other big news this week was that BuzzFeed, published a story that said Robert Mueller had evidence of Trump committing an impeachable crime, but the details were so sketchy that even Mueller's team had to be like, sorry, fake news. How disappointing was that? You know how many suburban moms had to retract their group text to the family reading, "We got him"?
Look, BuzzFeed, I think it's great. We all think it's great that you want to help, but this isn't really what we need from you. Y'all are BuzzFeed. You do memes and lists.
Cat videos.
Right.
I want to turn this a little bit into what your expertise is, John. Second Amendment, gun rights. Tell us where we. And I know it's not blasting over every top of every blog or newspaper in the country right now, but quietly the things going on in Congress, right? Tell us about it.
Well, it's not just in Congress, but it's nationwide. Congress is introducing a slew of gun bills. I don't think people think that they'll get passed directly by the Senate, but from what I hear, the House will probably bundle some of them into future budgets and kind of hopefully force
what's the
well,
topic of these?
two of the big ones they have are the so-called universal background checks on private transfers of guns, and the other one is these red flag laws. You know, the irony is...
Tell me what's a red flag law?
Well, these are ones that if, you know, a relative or a neighbor or police officer has some concern about you, maybe being a danger to yourself or others, then they can go to a judge and without a hearing have somebody take away their guns.
Take them away or investigate?
Take them away.
Take them away.
Yeah.
Just based on someone else's making a phone call.
Right. And some of the concerning things is they don't even have criteria listed in the law. It's kind of like the old thing about pornography. You know it when you'll see it. And when you go and you talk to people who actually go and do these laws in the 12 states that have them right now, they'll say, well, we look at whether somebody has a criminal history.
Two questions I want to get to because
Sure.
I only have a little bit of time. Number one, is there anything moving forward, and I hope not, a national gun registry?
Well, the universal background check in some sense could become a registry because every transfer...
That's going forward, though.
Right, it would be.
As opposed to a look back on current gun
but the
owners.
thing is, the licensed dealers who would do the background check on every transfer as well as new sales have to keep those records. And so 4 or 5 or 6 years from now, some future president could go in and say, you know, all those records that you've kept, we want you, it's probably already digitized, send them in to the federal government, and you have kind of an instant national registry.
It's interesting, and almost a corollary to that would be something that conservatives like me would like, which is a national reciprocity for concealed carry. Is that going anywhere?
No, I mean, they can't.
Just to define for our audience what
Right.
we're talking.
Right now, I mean, if you have a driver's license,
Right.
you can drive from Florida to Maine to California. If you have a concealed carry permit, most states have agreements with other states that will honor it, but there are
Adjacent states.
Well, not just adjacent, but across the country. The average state has agreements with like 35 other
Okay.
states.
All right.
But let's say you're a trucker and you're traveling through New York or Illinois or California. You know, just because you can go and carry most of the time, you may not be able to go and take the gun with you
Right.
because of the laws in different states. And so, you know, if you have a single woman who's traveling across the country and her car breaks down, she may want to be able to protect herself. I get emails frequently from truckers and who will say, look, they're worried about their valuable stuff in their truck. They're worried about being held up and things stolen, and they like to be able to protect themselves.
Note to truckers: don't drive in California, New York, Illinois. if you got valuable
Well, there are a
stuff
few
in
other
your
states,
library.
too.
A few other. John Lott, thank you very much. Always
Great
something
seeing
comes
you.
up with Second Amendment stuff, we're going to bring you back. Thanks for
Great,
having us.
thanks.
Thanks for being a sport in the cold weather. It's probably down to 25 degrees here.
Well, you
We're
were
outside,
right. I would have worn something different, maybe.
Next time, he's going to wear the long johns.
Okay.
underneath. John Lott, we're going to say thank you very much. We're coming right back with Anna. She was at the border last week, so were we. We'll talk to her in a minute.